This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. So today we're going to be speaking about Shavuot. The question that comes up when you think about Shavuot is, what mitzvah do we do on Shavuot? If you think about it, every single Jewish holiday, there is a specific mitzvah that we do for that holiday. Let's start with Pesach, for example. Pesach, we do? Matzah, very good. We do matzah. Okay, one Jewish person in the class. All right, Sukkot, we do? Lulav, there we go. Lulav, Sukkah, we do a bunch of stuff. We hit leaves on the floor, we do a bunch of fun stuff. The Rosh Hashanah, a little harder. Shofar, very good. Still one Jewish person. Okay, so we do shofar. Even if you go to the other, like let's say for example Purim, we have the Megillah, we have Meshloach Manot, we have Hanukkah, we have the candles. Now when I ask you, what do we do on Shavuot? Don't say cheesecake. Is that what you're going to say? We do Torah? We do Torah all day. We do Torah. Yeah, one holiday we do Judaism. When you think about it, every holiday has a holiday-specified mitzvah. Shavuot has nothing. And why not? It's like, this should be the most, we should be doing like tons of stuff on Shavuot. Because if you think about it, this is where we got the Torah. This is where we got everything that came after it. So how come we don't do anything? What we do is we do minhagim. So we have, we decorate our houses or the shuls. We eat, milcha, we eat dairy. But why is it that we don't, those are all minhagim. Why is it that we don't do something specific for Shavuot? And then some people say, well, we stay up for, at least the men, stay up all night and they learn Torah. That's not a Shavuot specific. First of all, it's not a minhag. It's not a commandment. It's a minhag. Secondly, it's not something like, well, we learn on Shavuot. A man has an obligation to learn every free second that he has. It's not something new that's on Shavuot. Be like, okay, once a year I'm going to learn, whatever. I'll do it. It's something that you have an obligation to do every time. So what is it that we do on Shavuot? What makes Shavuot stick out different? And it's like, it sort of seems like it's just sort of like a Shabbat holiday, but on Shavuot with mixing in with dairy. So when we went to get the Torah, God goes over to we'll speak about it maybe if we have time later. God goes over to all the nations. You want it? No. He goes to the Jewish people. You want it? Yes. And then he's like, basically puts a gun to our head, but it wasn't a gun, it was a mountain. He took a mountain, put it on top of us and be like, are you going to take it? If not, this is going to be your burial place. Like, we just said that we will. What's with the putting in the mountain? It's like someone goes and it comes over to somebody else, not in this room, and says, hey, give me all your money. This is what we know in Brooklyn as a mugging. And he goes and you say, okay, fine, here, you can take out the wallet, and because you want to live, and you give the guy the money. And then he takes out a gun and says, if you don't give me all your money, I'm going to shoot you. You have my wallet. I just gave you everything that I have. So what is God doing? If we already said that we're going to accept it, then why is God then putting a mountain over us and says, if you don't take it, this is going to be your burial spot? So the Chachamim, the Chazal tell us that on Shavuot is, so to speak, our wedding with God. That, when you get married, you have a chuppah. You're supposed to have a chuppah. You know what was our chuppah? The mountain that God put over our head was the chuppah between us and God. So what does that mean? You're getting married to God. How do we understand? How do we understand this? So one of the cornerstones of Judaism is to love God. In fact, when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right after that we say Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. That you have to love God. Loving God is a very, very fundamental aspect of Judaism. And many people say, yeah, I love God. You don't love God. You don't even listen to God. How you love somebody, you don't listen to it. Me and God, we're tight. And you're crossing hands because that's a Christian thing. But he says, me and God, I love God. Yeah, me and God, he's my homie. What is it that love defines? And in fact, if you look at what it says after Kriyat Shema, what we say in the Pasuk in Devarim, we say, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. You have to love God. B'chol levavcha, with all your heart, b'chol nafshcha, with all your soul, b'chol modecha, with all your means. How romantic is that? Imagine you have to write vows for somebody. We don't do that because we have to love somebody unconditionally all the time with the person that we're marrying, obviously. But imagine you're writing a vow, right? And you say, I will love you with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my means. That's the most beautiful thing anybody has ever said to me. It's something, that's beautiful. But what does that mean? What does that mean to love God with your whole body, your whole soul, and with all your means? So, the Rambam, in Hilchot Shuvah, goes and in the 10th paragraph, he goes and explains how are you supposed to fulfill this mitzvah of loving God. It says when somebody goes and is infatuated, let's say someone, you're dating a guy, or a guy's dating a girl, and they're infatuated with them, they're going to get married to them, and what are you doing all day? Hey, what's up? Smiley face, winky face, emoji, I don't know what other stuff is going on here. Non-stop, what is on your mind? Hey, what you doing? I haven't spoken to you in 55 seconds. Non-stop is going to be on the other person. Non-stop, you're always obsessed with what the other person is doing. And wait till you get married. Unfortunately, it's like, so leave me alone already. Before you get married, it's non-stop. After you get married, it's like, give me some space. I need some space with my guys. Which is a problem, by the way. It shouldn't be like that. It should just keep on getting stronger and stronger. Obviously, the infatuation goes away, but that should be replaced with love. This is the way that we have a true and a real relationship with somebody else, with the spouse. That is the way that we're supposed to have a relationship to God, and this is how the Rambam explains. Rambam explains based off Shir HaShirim. In Shir HaShirim, it says, Ki cholat ahava ani. I am lovesick over you. I'm so lovesick. What happens when you're lovesick over somebody? He's constantly on your mind. Imagine if you have this relationship with God. Then no matter whatever you do during the day, it'll be like you're always thinking about God. You're always doing something. Your mind is always God. That is a fundamental aspect of Judaism. That is that God is always on your mind. You're always, and that is what the veikut means. The veikut means attachment to God. That means that you're always thinking, what is it that I need to do for God? Like I'm so much in love with God. I just want to make God happy. I just want to do everything that I can, that I need to. So we can understand this a little bit by looking how when we call Pesach, we call it Pesach. When the Torah calls it Pesach, it doesn't call it Pesach, it calls it Chag HaMatzot. So the question is, why is it when the people, go, and even to this day, you don't ask somebody, hey, where are you going for Chag HaMatzot? Be like, what are you talking about? I'm barely Jewish. What is Chag HaMatzot? You say, where are you going for Pesach? Where are you going for Passover? You don't say where are you going, but yet the Torah says, it doesn't say where you're going, but it deals with what? It calls it Chag HaMatzot. The Jewish people call it Chag HaPesach. Why is it that we're using two different languages? So, when we're calling it Chag HaPesach, what are we saying? What was Pesach? Pesach was that God, literally passed over all our houses and didn't kill us and killed only the firstborn Egyptians. What we're saying is look what God did for us. He passed over us, He saved us, and He took only care of our enemies. He didn't take care of us. What is Chag HaMatzot? Chag HaMatzot is God calling the Jewish people, look what they did for me. What did the Jewish people do? The Jewish people went, and it was time for them to leave. But they didn't have any food. Have you ever seen a real Jewish mother send out a child without any food on a trip to Kings Highway, which is a block and a half away? It's like you take a snack, take this, and you're going with bags of groceries, just in case you get hungry, which is probably why we have a lot of cardiologists also. So in any case, we prepare. It's food. Who knows if you can have kosher food on Kings Highway nowadays, Midday, Tuesday, you never know what's going to be open. Maybe, it's going to be closed. So you go and you prepare. Imagine what it was when God goes and tells the Jewish people, hey, it's time to kish. Let's go. We're going out. And all we have is matzot. And we're like, cool, let's go. Let's do it. So spontaneous, yeah, right? And so we go and we leave. And God goes over. You know what God calls it? God calls it Chag HaMatzot. Look what the Jewish people did for me. They didn't have anything. They went based off only on faith, on the emunah and the bitachon that they had in God, that God is going to provide. They didn't care about anything else. We have the matzot. Let's go. We're going. We don't care about anything else. So, what is a true relationship? A true relationship isn't this, you know what I bring to the table? You know what I bring to the table? It's the opposite. It says, look what you bring into the table. Look what you're doing. God is calling it, what is the holiday? Chag HaMatzot. Chag HaMatzot, look what you did. And the Jewish people say, no, Chag HaPesach, look what you did. That is a true relationship. That is a relationship of a true, I guess we could call it a marital relationship. The idea is brought out further when God goes over to us and says, hey, do you want to accept my Torah? And we say, Na'aseh v'nishma. What is Na'aseh v'nishma? We will do, and then we will listen. When was the last time someone called you up and be like, hey, I need a favor? No, I need a huge favor. I need a huge favor. What are you going to say? You're going to be like, first of all, you're going to be like, what do you need? I mean, this could be, you could have blood oaths with this friend. I mean, if they're calling you for a huge favor, the first thing they ask is well, it depends, Do you need to drive you somewhere, or do you need a body part, like a kidney? We're going to draw the line somewhere over here. So, imagine the relationship that you have to have with somebody, that someone calls you up and be like, a huge favor. You know what I'm saying? It's over the top huge. Huge favor. No problem. Whatever it is that you want, I got you. How strong does that relationship need to be? God comes over to us and be like, I have something, I have a Torah that I have to, I'll give you. We're like, we'll do it. We'll take it. We don't even need to know what's inside it. Na'aseh. First we will do, v'nishma, then we'll listen. We're going to do it. Regardless of whatever it is inside there, we're doing it. You know how strong that relationship is? Now we have to figure out, we have to understand, how do we achieve this strong relationship in Judaism? How do we achieve this relationship that no matter whatever God says, be like, we got it, we're doing it, no problem. So for this, I have to, bring to you Rabbi Shimshon Pinkus, beautiful, beautiful ideas that he brings down on the Torah. It says in Mishleh, in chapter 6, verse 23, it says, Ki ner mitzvah v'Torah. The mitzvot is like a candle, the Torah is like a light. Now, if I would ask you, I don't know how to phrase this the right way, what would produce more light? With two phraseology that I will give you. One is candle, and one is light. Which one do you think would produce more light? Would be stronger? Nobody? Light, obviously. No? Light is the one. Alright, whatever. Okay. It was obvious for me.
Candle, you don't place.
Well, true, but it's the same thing. But it depends what it is. Light is something that is light. It's just, it lights it up. Candle produces light, but what does it produce? What type of light does it produce? So if you're in a pitch black room, you light a candle, lights up the whole room. It's unbelievable. If you're in a pitch black room, you light a small match, the whole room, a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. But if you have light of the essence of light, then there's no darkness even. The whole thing is light. The mitzvot, in this dark world, it produces light. It lights up everything. But Torah, the Torah, which is light itself, is no comparison to what it could actually produce in this world. And the Chazal tell us something very, very scary that the Rab Shimshon Pinkus brings down. He says that somebody who is an Am Haaretz, somebody who doesn't know anything about the Torah, doesn't really know what's going on, he does not merit Tchiyat HaMetim. He does not merit resurrection of the dead. And he brings it off of Chazal in the Gemara in Ketubot, page 111b. It says, whoever uses the light of Torah brings him back to life, and whoever does not use the light of Torah, the Torah does not bring him back to life. A very, very scary thing. Like, you want resurrection? A fundamental of resurrection is you have to learn Torah. You have to learn Torah. That's what you need for resurrection. The question that the Gemara asks, the Gemara in Brachot asks, well then what about women? Women do not have an obligation to learn Torah like a man does. And I had to emphasize like a man does. So a man has an obligation to learn Torah all the time. A woman does not have the obligation to learn Torah all the time. A woman obviously has to learn Torah. You have to learn the laws and obligations that you need to do. I was giving a class recently, I was giving class this past Tuesday, and one of the we were speaking about. There's a certain place that I speak on Tuesday that the 95% of the people don't keep Shabbat. So what am I going to speak about every time I speak there? I'm going to speak about Shabbat every single time. That's what all I speak about. Not like it's like I'm like it's like, and they're like, why are you always speaking about this? So like, imagine someone comes to a doctor, and the doctor, with a very, very severe headache, like a very, very severe headache, but he's missing a foot and he's gushing out blood. It's like spurting out with the veins and everything. And he's like, doc, I feel very lightheaded. I don't know what's going on up here. My head is hurting me. He's like, can you help me with the headache? The doctor's gonna be like, forget the headache. Let me tourniquet this thing over here before you die out of bleeding. So you invite me in a place to speak, and no one here is gonna speak. No one here keeps Shabbat. If I'm gonna start telling you stories about tzaddikim, that's great. That's gonna be great. But what's gonna do with the blood that's spilling out that you're not keeping Shabbat? So nonstop, I usually speak about the Shabbat. So this past week, a guy comes up and says, "But the laws are so difficult on Shabbat. How am I supposed to know it? How am I supposed to know everything?" I'm like, okay, granted, the first Shabbat that you keep, you probably don't know, enough to do it. You know enough to be like, I probably can't do this. I probably can't do this. I probably can't do this. As you learn, you'll be able to gain it. But if you think about it, people think like Shabbat is crazy. There's so many laws, and there is so many laws. But there's so many books in English right now. One book, a 2-volume book, 3-volume books, even a 4-volume book. But whatever, it's a few books that you'll be able to read, and you'll know the basics of Shabbat. Not even the basics, you'll probably know an advanced level of Shabbat. So as an excuse, he was telling me, like, how do we know if we'll never keep Shabbat right? I'd be like, why not? Why will you never keep Shabbat right? Why can't you never keep Shabbat right? Be like, there's so many laws. So learn it. It's just like open a book and read it. It's in English. It's easy. They even have like a kitzur shulchan of kitzur halachot of Shabbat. One book, all of the halachot of Shabbat. What's your excuse? A person always has to be learning Torah. That is a man. A woman also has the obligation to learn Torah. But what is the obligation? The obligation is not like a man, meaning that she has to learn Torah, whatever. She needs to know the laws. You need the laws of basar v'chalav. How do you know when you're cooking, what it is that you're allowed to do, what is it that you're not allowed to, what is it allowed you to mix, what you're not allowed to mix, what the pots and the ovens and this and that. Everything you do, Shabbat you need to know. You need to know the basic, the fundamentals of Judaism. So, but the question is that the bottom line is, if the way that you get Tchiyat HaMetim is through resurrection of the dead, if the way that you get resurrection of the dead is through learning Torah, how does a woman, the Gemara on Bachot, page 17, asks how does a woman gain the merit? And the Gemara answers, by sending her children and her husband to learn Torah. When they send their children and their husband to learn Torah, they get the merit. I don't think you understand how awesome of a deal that you guys have. It's like, all the work, you get all the reward, know the work. All you got to do is just kick your husband out and be like, go learn Torah. A husband's going to eventually listen to his wife. You guys know that you control. We're in America, all right? I know you guys are Sephardi and Russian, and it's always the man who says anything, and if you don't listen, but we're in America now, all right? And America, the women are the ones who are doing the all right? So you should know that when you get married, that you're going to be going and you're going to be telling your husband, why are you not learning Torah? Go learn Torah. Because when he learns Torah, you get reward for it. Come on, no. Let's talk. You see this Snapchat picture? You see this Instagram picture? You see only 500 likes. And I thought I had friends. You go and you waste time with your husband. Instead, granted, you have to spend time with your husband. You do. You have to go. You have to bond together. But you should make sure that the husband goes and the husband learns Torah, because you get a reward for that. And the children also. You have to make the children go and get reward. You're going to go learn Torah because you're the one who's going to get reward for it. How does the woman merit Tchiyat HaMetim? By sending their husbands and their children to go learn Torah. But it says something very interesting that I don't think a lot of people actually speak upon this. It says, and they wait for their husbands to come back. And they wait for the husband to come back. It doesn't mean if your husband is a big Talmid Chacham, he learns at 4 a.m, that you're going to be, staying up on the counter, like every 30 seconds, we're like, oh, you're home finally. Okay, I'm so tired. I'm going to go to sleep. It means that what does it mean that you wait for your husband to come back? Husband comes back to learn Torah, be like, so what did you learn? What did you learn today? Tell me, show interest in it. You're waiting for him. You're anticipating, him to come back. There's a lot of different answers, and we could actually spend the whole class just in explaining what does that mean, waiting for your husband to come back. But the idea is that when you send your husband to learn Torah, you get the reward for it, and that's the way that you're going to get, Tchiyat HaMetim. Says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, he goes on and he continues, and he says that why is it whenever we speak about Torah, we speak about the love of Torah. And he goes and he gives an example by saying Ahava Rabba. Right before we say Kriyat Shema, we say Ahava Rabba. Ahava Rabba or Ahavat Olam. We say, we ask for an understanding of Torah, and the way that we ask it is through love. And we say, no, God, through love, give us the Torah. And not only through love, there's also another aspect. We also say it through mercy. Avinu Ava Rachaman, Hamarachem Rachem Aleinu. Right, in that one sentence, I said 3 different types of mercy. Ava Rachaman, Father, merciful Father. Hamarachem, who is merciful. Rachem Aleinu, be merciful on us. And then we go, well, first of all, why 3? 3 is a chazakah. But we go and we nonstop, we're begging, and we're asking through love to give us the understanding of Torah. What is this understanding? Techanenu, we give all these different words that we ask for Torah, which is a very interesting, idea of it. Why is it that it has to be like a sort of a gift? And really it is. To understand Torah is a gift. We know in Bachot, page 32b, that Moshe Rabbeinu, when if you would ask, they had a thing in one of these, Torah Connections, Times, whatever, one of these magazines, I don't know what it's called, Torah something, and where there's 7,000 ads, and then there's one Dvar Torah, Torah, so they go and they ask a bunch of people who you would invite to your sukkah. If you could invite anybody in history, who you would invite for you. By the way, it's a great thing, because it made me think, who would I invite? If you could pick anybody in history, I really hope it will be Jewish. But if you could invite anybody, Muhammad Ali, if you could invite him to the sukkah, right? If you could invite somebody to the sukkah, who would you invite? So you had different people say different things. The greatest answer that I've seen. That was, I forgot by which rabbi, but the rabbi said, because people were like, Moshe Rabbeinu, or like, Aaron and David, like answers like, which is like awesome. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Like, yeah, all right, Adam, Noach, and I don't know, like crazy things, which I would pick. But then I saw an answer that blew my mind. It was a big rabbi, I forgot who it was, and he says, 3 poor people who can't have a meal for Sukkot. And I'm like, that was like, I'm like, that's why he's the top. That's why he's called the big rabbi. Because this is the way that he thinks. But imagine you're able to invite somebody. Imagine you're able to invite Moshe Rabbeinu. Can you get any higher Moshe Rabbeinu in the Torah? Can you get anybody any higher than that? Yet says the Gemara Bachot, page 32b, that says what? That says that God was teaching Moshe Torah. Now, if you could find the best teacher, it would probably be God. Right? I mean, not probably, obviously. God was teaching Moshe Torah. But yet Moshe didn't remember it. It's just like, he forgot it. Until God gave it to him as a present. And the question is, why did God give it to him? Why does it need to be a present? It's like a gift, this Torah. To understand this Torah as a gift. What is this whole gift, this whole begging for love, this whole merciful, how do we understand this in the Torah? There's a midrash in Shemot Rabbah that says that there is no other merchandise. When you buy a car, right? You go to a car salesman and say you don't lose your pants, right, with him scheming you, and you go and you buy a used car, a new car, whatever it is, you buy a car, and after you make the purchase, you'd be like, do you expect the car salesman to be now your personal chauffeur? Be like, okay, I bought the car, are you now going to come and drive me around? Be like, no, here's the keys. Enjoy, drive around. It's just everything is up. It's like up. Everything's up. Okay, so you don't expect when you buy something that you would get the owner or the salesman to come along with the product. No, nothing like that. You buy an iPhone, you don't expect a Chinese kid to come with you. I'm just kidding. Slave labor, I don't know. You buy a pair of Nike, okay, let's do non-Chinese thing. You buy something, you don't expect the manufacturer, you don't expect the person that owns it to, you didn't buy him, you didn't buy the owner, you didn't buy the producer, you bought just the product. Yet the Torah is very different. The Torah, God says, He says that I sold my Torah to you, and so to speak, I was sold along with it. That God gave himself along with the Torah. To understand this level of you know what that means? That God gave himself with the Torah, and we'll explain what that means in a minute. But to understand the level of what the Torah is worth now, that you have the Creator itself gave as a part of himself in the Torah. And not only did he give it, it's not like he gave it to us and be like, okay, this is an instruction manual, go figure it out, go learn it, go discuss it. No, in Devarim, in chapter 39, verse 12, Lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven. We have ownership of the Torah. We have the ownership to interpret the Torah and to understand the Torah and to figure out the Torah and to learn by the Torah. But that's not only that God gave himself part of the Torah, gave it to us, but also gave us the ownership of the Torah. And to the extent that we don't understand this, you know that the reward that people get for learning Torah, nobody knows. It's so high, even the angels don't know about it. It says in Yeshayahu in Isaiah chapter 64 verse 3, Ayin lo ra'ata, no eye has ever seen what this means. You cannot comprehend the reward that you get for something like this. And understandably so, your God is connected to this. You're learning to it, you're connecting with God to this. To explain this even a little more, Rabbi Shimon Pincus goes and gives a great example. You're walking down and you take out this, nice pen. Let's use a watch. I don't know how expensive pens are. Right? So you have these. You could buy a watch for $100,000, right? But you buy a nice expensive watch, or someone buys it for you, whatever it is. You have a watch. When somebody sees you walking down the street with let's say they know watches, they'll be like, jewelry. Should we speak? I don't know. What's easier? I don't know what girls. Watch is good. Okay, watch is good. Okay, I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay, so. You're walking down with a nice, beautiful watch, and somebody comes up to you and be like, wow, that's a beautiful watch. What is one of the questions they ask? Where did you buy it? Like, where did you get it? That's one of the questions that they'll ask you. Any product that you would have would be like, oh, that's really cool. Where did you buy it? If you're a Jew, then you would probably ask, how much did you pay for it? And if it's a Jew responding, you'd be like, well, obviously I paid under retail value because I'm a Jew. So, and I know people, I have connections. So, the idea of it is imagine you're walking around with a flawless 25-pound diamond. Again, right? So it's heavy, right? You're walking around, there's like Well, yeah. Let's revamp the story a bit. Somebody comes to your house and you have on display a 25-pound flawless diamond, like blue carrots, and it's like beautiful, flawless, the highest quality, the highest clarity, everything's amazing. This diamond is priceless. And nobody's going to ask you, so where did you buy that? Was it Zales? I don't know, whatever. Did you buy, which, Macy's? You don't ask for a priceless item. You don't ask where did you get it. You ask who gave it to you. Because a priceless item you don't buy, you get. So the question changes a little bit. It changes is not where did you buy it, but rather who gave it to you. When we have the Torah is priceless. It's not where did you get it and be like, well, I worked really hard and I got the Torah. No, it's who gave it to you. Where did you get that? Now, if you're dealing with a priceless item, there is no amount of work that you could do. There's no amount of merit, better yet, that you could do to say like, yeah, I deserve it. Look at Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have enough merits. The top of the top of the top, and yet God had to give it to him as a gift. The Nefesh HaChaim says also that the difference between the Torah and all the other mitzvot is the Torah is the expression of God himself. Can you get something more priceless than that? You have people that, do a painting and then they commit suicide and the painting is worth, instantly 10,000 times more. What do you do when you have a painting of the Creator himself? The painting, not obviously of the Creator, but the painting that the Creator did himself. I'm digging myself into the hole. And this is where love comes in. Love is something that is mutual. Love has to be two-way. Think of it this way. Imagine you have a little child that runs and jumps up, gives his father a big hug and a kiss, and the father is so moved by this expression of love that he decides he's going to buy this the child a present, and buys him a nice beautiful present. Now, is the present a payment for the kiss and the hug that he gave him? No. It's like you brought out some love, some emotions that because of that, the father bought the present. The love goes in both directions. Love has to go in both directions. In order for us to get God's love, so to speak, and again, that's a very, very difficult statement what I just said because God loves everybody. But in order for us to arouse, as the Reb Shimshon Pika says, in order for us to arouse God's love, the only way we need to do it is to love Him. And this is the way we understand that we know that Torah is like a brit. A covenant. A covenant has to be. There's two people. There's two people in it, and this is why. And I believe we spoke about it in our current series that we're middle on, the Divinity series. That why is it that God doesn't make it obvious that God just exists? Well, first of all, the answer is it is obvious. If you just open your eyes, it's very obvious that God exists. But then I get asked, but no, make it real obvious. Like the fact that I'm holding a cell phone, or the fact that I'm holding this remote, that. It should be like that I can see that God exists. Why isn't it that it's so obvious like that? And the answer is because if it would be so obvious like this, that you see me holding this item, that's how you know that for sure there's a God, then you lose, there's no free will. Like if you know without a doubt in your mind, which you should anyways, but without any doubt, like everybody knows without a doubt in their mind, then you lose the free will. If there's no free will, there's no purpose. There's no relationship. You can't have a relationship if there's no free will in it. In order for a relationship to work, both parties have to be equally vested, equally wanting, out of their own free will to be part of this relationship. That is why we're dealing with this understanding as love. Love should be unconditional, but the giving of love it does not depend on something on the other person's love. It's like once you have that love, the giving is unconditional as well. We know it says in Daniel chapter 2 verse 21, "Yehav chachmata l'chakimim." God gives wisdom to the wise. Very, very difficult, pasuk to understand. What does that mean? God gives wisdom to the wise. If anything, God should give wisdom to the dumb people, right? Yeah, no, 100%. Should give people to. God gives wisdom to the wise. That's not fair. Give people, and in fact, there's a midrash in Kohelet Rabbah that a Roman noblewoman asked Rabbi Yossi bar Chalafta, and she asked him, says, this pasuk. Says, I don't understand this pasuk. What does it mean that God gives wisdom to the wise? It makes no sense. God should give wisdom to someone who's not wise, so they will become wise. That's what it should work. So, Rabbi Yossi bar Chalafta goes and asks her, and he says, if you had you do have a lot of money. Two people come over to you asking for a loan. One of them is very, very wealthy. The other one is very, very poor. Who are you going to give the money to? She says, obviously the wealthy one. She says, why? The poor man needs more money. She says, well, simple. If the poor man loses my money, I have no way of getting it back. But if the wealthy man loses my money, he has people that he can borrow from that he can pay me back. So Rabbi Yosef Chalafta says, listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. He says, if God gives wisdom to the dumb people, to the silly people, to the people that don't know what to do with the wisdom, what are they going to use the wisdom for? Learn how to do, down, right, triple X, triangle, whatever. Beat games. That's what they use the wisdom. I realize that the girls over here, I'm speaking to guys, spend too much time on video games. What are they going to use the wisdom for? I'm going to figure out how to beat this level. This is the wisdom that God gave it to. Or let's say, if we may, tread on dangerous territory. What if a woman gets a wisdom? She's going to come out and is going to be able to contour the right way. The shadows are going to be perfect, and then she's going to look 75 pounds, thinner. Yeah, I know stuff. Yeah. So, see? Proof that I'm married. Okay. See, when I see my wife, okay, I can't. She's actually going to be upset when the way that you paint your face. You know what? I already said I'm treading on dangerous territory. But you know what's interesting? You literally have to be artists for these things because if one eye is a little bit just higher or lower, that's it. You're done. And you have to be whatever. Whatever. Let's move on from this. Let's go into safe waters. Safe waters, right? Nah. Okay, uncharted territory. Okay, so now when we go and what God goes and God gives wisdom to the wise. What does it mean? God gives wisdom to the wise. It doesn't mean that they have to be wise, they have to be smart now. But God gives wisdom to the people that will be able to appreciate the wisdom, that will be able to understand the wisdom, people that will be using the wisdom for the good. And those are the people that get the wisdom. So how do we get that? When we want to get the Torah, we have to be able to appreciate it. And if we may, the chidush that if I may sort of extend, maybe we could extend this also to panasah, to money. Maybe God gives people money, we can say, also to the people that can appreciate money. And I'm not saying appreciate money, be like, I'm going to go shop in Hermes or Louis Vuitton or
Rabbi.
Prada. Okay, that's as far as I know, I think. Okay.
Have that much money?
What?
You think we have that much money?
No, I'm saying, let's say God gives you that money. That doesn't mean appreciating money doesn't mean buying a $25,000 bag. It doesn't mean, what appreciating money is, you're doing right things with the money. And the right things with the money, people are like, I send my mother, a dozen roses every single day. That's awesome, amazing, you should keep on doing that. But when I'm saying that you're doing the right thing with the money, I'm saying according to the Torah. And in fact, it's not really a chidush that I'm saying, because really the Torah says this. The Torah says that if you give ma'asel, then you will get rich. Asel, shetis asel. If you give ma'asel, if you give 10% of your income to do charity, then you will get wealthy. So it's not really, what does that mean? That means if you're showing God, I know what to do with the money. I know what to do with that. I'm doing the right thing with the money. Then God will say, okay, you're doing the right thing. Then you deserve more. I know how to appreciate the wisdom. I know how to appreciate this. Then, well, you know what? Then God will give you this. If you know how to appreciate it. This is why Hakarat Tov is so fundamental to Judaism. Judaism, Hakarat Tov is there's non-stop that we have to figure out and work on ourselves on being grateful. As a Jewish person, you have to be grateful. Because this is really the fundamental of the Torah. But what I'm saying, so when you want to understand the Torah, when you want to learn the Torah, that means you have to. It's a love. You have to love it. You have to get. You're dedicated to the learning. You love the learning. You care. There's so much more to it than just like chemistry 101 or whatever. Bio, is it 101, right? That's okay, fine. Is this mine, by the way? Is this mine? Okay. This is why also, when people ask me, what is one of the greatest qualities that you should look for in a person with, in the spiritual qualities? In my humble opinion, I think it's dveikut. What's dveikut? Always connected to God. Always wanting to do the right thing. Because not everybody could be the biggest tzaddik of the generation. But if somebody has that in them, that they always want to do the right thing, then that person is going to achieve greatness. They might not be the biggest rabbi, but they're going to be a great person. They're going to always want to know, I want to do the right thing. I want to do what God wants me to do. I want to make my wife happy. If somebody has that dveikut, that connection to God, then that is a great, great quality to look for. Especially, when you're dating. And people, unfortunately, people sell themselves short all the time. I can't do it. I can't be modest. It's too hard. It's too hot. How to get, you know what? If you say that you can't, you're right. You can't. If you say that you could, you know what? You could. That is such a great statement. I'll say it so many times. If you don't think that you can do it, then you're done. You can't do it. If you think that you could do it, then you could do it. And that is why you have like bodybuilders. I'm hoping no one here knows what I'm talking about. But men do, not because they bodybuild, because they dream. So when you have a bodybuilder, you know what is a very common thing that bodybuilders, so they're lifting like 7 million pounds, right? And they're about to, you know what they scream? They scream lightweight. They're like, lightweight is nothing, I could do this. Why? Because if you say that you can do something, you can do it. If you say, no, I can't do it, then that's it. You really can't. You can't. If you don't think that you can do it, then who can tell you that you can't do it if you don't think you can do it? This is what we ask. We ask God, ahava rabba. We're asking God through a love. There's only one way to connect to Torah, and that is through love. When we look at the stories of the tzaddikim of the generation, we see that the way that they achieved greatness was through the love that they had it. You have, like, for example, the Chazon Ish was one time found sleeping on the floor. And, his student came in and were like, Rabbi, is everything okay? Why are you on the floor? Be like, I was learning and I thought I would have enough energy to get to my bed, and I didn't have that enough energy, so I ended up just making it only to the floor, and I, fell asleep over here. Now, people say that, be like, wow, it's really cool. But have you ever thought about this story? I mean, it seems like a very nice, cool, cute little story to tell you kids maybe at bedtime. He had so much, strength, and he was learning Torah all the time. But do we understand what that means? You could be fasting for like 3 days, right? You could like not sleep for that. How much strength does it take for you to get up from the floor into the bed? Not that much. But yet the Chazon Ish was learning so much. We understand these are righteous people that are learning 22 hours a day. They're learning 23 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day. And they're going and they're using every last minute of strength that they have to learn Torah. They're dedicating themselves to it. Where does that come from? That comes from the love of the Torah. When you're infatuated with the Torah, when you're so close to it, that's how you achieve greatness in it. If you so much as love God, then no matter if it's 1.5 million degrees, I don't care, I'm going to be modest. I don't care, I'm going to be tzniut. What does it make a difference if I'm sweating a sauna puddle around me? I don't care, it doesn't make a difference. I love God so much, I'm going to do whatever it is that I can. Chacham Avaya Yusef, he first of all, the stories that you have about Chacham Avaya is so unbelievable. But I want to share, before I even tell you some of his stories, that his son, Chacham David Yosef, goes and he says in the name of his father. I'm going to quote what he said in the name of his father. He wishes, and he's saying in the name of his father, that everybody would know that his mastery of Torah is not only due to being a prodigy, but also due to his tireless effort and toiling in the Torah. You know why Chacham Avaya Yosef became what he became? There are many geniuses. Baruch Hashem, we have many geniuses. But you know what breaks it? The tireless, the non-stop toiling, the non-stop learning of Torah. No matter what goes on in that person's life, no matter what's going on in the day, that person is learning Torah. That person is doing what they need to do. And in fact, there's, when Chacham Avaya Yosef, one time his children were sitting over there, and they saw him that he woke up, and it's not like, Chacham Avaya Yosef barely slept. When he slept, he woke up, he ran to the sink, washed his hands, ran to say Birkat Torah, and then he ran to open up a sefer, and he opened up a sefer. And his son came over to him, he's like, I understand that your love for the Torah, I understand how close you are to Torah, but like to such an extent, you had to run to do it. So he said, you don't understand. He says, last night I was learning the Rivash, a holy work, a holy sefer by a holy rabbi, and I found it was some sort of contradiction that I found between one thing that he said to another thing that he said, and it really bothered me. Last night, the Rivash came to me in a dream, and he says, I answered this contradiction in this book, in this page, in this area. So when I woke up, I wanted to check it out. Do you think I could wait for that? I ran to go wash my hands. I ran to go say Birkat Torah, and then I ran to check it, and guess what? That's where the answer was. I found my answer. This is what, Chacham Avaya said one time was he was in a library. And it's one of those nice libraries, you got to climb up the stairs to get to the top shelf. And he climbed up the stairs to open a book, and he was reading a sefer. And he was so engrossed in the sefer that he thought he was on the ground already. So he just continued walking, and then, right down on the floor. You know how engrossed that you have to be in the learning Torah? And in fact, there was another, I don't know if this was the same story, but one time they found Chacham Avaya Yosef, his son found him on the floor. He found him on the floor, wasn't sleeping, he was learning Torah in a sefer on the floor. So he sees him and says, what's going on? Is everything okay? He's like, yeah, I was, in the middle of the night, I went to get a sefer, I fell down, and, I was in pain, so I was calling for people, but nobody heard me, so I just grabbed the nail sefer that I could do, and I was sitting and learning Torah. It was a different story. they actually took him to the doctor. He had a broken bone in his back that he needed surgery.
He fell. He was going to go to bed. He fell.
And that's why he
He was going to sit down.
and then
the chair wasn't there.
whatever it was, he was in enough pain that he needed. Let's rephrase that. You have now. I'll use men as an example. If they have a slight headache, I can't learn. It's so hot. And sometimes it is. If it's raining a little bit, I can't come to class. I'm sorry. It's like that. You have. What true greatness is? The rabbi falls on the floor, is in excruciating pain that he needs surgery. That's not like, I need a Tylenol to get out. That's surgery. He needs surgery to get out, and he's sitting on the floor and he's learning SFL. That is devotion. You only get that through love. You don't get that. You don't see a chemist, falling on the floor and be like, the periodic table. Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's not what you get that. So, and if you do, then whatever. So, yeah. But it's not only. But it's not. Chama Yosef was not only so devoted to just to learn Torah. For the regular Jewish people, also the first heart attack that Chama Yosef had, he needed a immediate surgery. And when they told him that he needs immediate surgery, he says, "I need to postpone it for 3 hours." And he's like, "There's no way. I'm not doing the surgery. I need to postpone it for 3 hours." He goes, they're like, "All right, what are you going to do?" Like a rabbi. If some rabbi, the biggest rabbi tells you need to postpone the surgery 3 hours, what are the doctors going to say? Postpone the surgery 3 hours. It comes back. Finally, the son asked him, "Why do you need to postpone it?" He said that, "I was writing a letter for Aguna. Aguna is a woman that we don't know where the husband is." He says, "I was in the middle of writing a letter that's telling her that she's able to get married." He says, "I don't know what's going to happen on the operating table if I'm going to make it out of here alive." He says, "If I don't make it out of here alive, what's going to be with this woman? What's going to be with this woman? Maybe she's never going to be able to get married again." He says, "I have to postpone it 3 hours." He went back home. He finished writing the letter. He gave her the letter. And then he says, "Now I'm ready for surgery." That is somebody who's devoted. You think that's something, like he goes, one time he was walking in the street and he was passing by, it was on Shabbat, and he passed by this group of, non-religious, Jewish teenagers playing soccer. And as a joke, they kicked it to the rabbi. But it hit his hat and he knocked off his hat. So the chutzpah, as one of the kids, goes and they say, "Hey Rabbi, you want to play with us?" And it was Shabbat. So the rabbi sees, a young teenage kid, playing on Shabbat, says, "You ate the Shabbat meal yet?" Chama Yosef asked him. So he says, "My parents are Holocaust survivors. They're not interested in, Shabbat." So he says, "Are you hungry?" He says, "Yeah, I'm kind of hungry." He says, "Why don't you come to my house? I'll give you some food." So the guy's like, "All right, free meal, why not? Let's do it." So he goes, the Chama Yosef takes him to his house, feeds him a Shabbat meal. And then after the meal, he says, Chama Yosef says, you tired? You look tired. You're very tired? He says, yeah, I'm a little tired. He says, "Why don't you take a nap?" And he goes and gives him a bed. He says, "Why don't you take a nap?" So he goes, and you'll see. He goes and he takes a nap. After he wakes up, Shabbat is over, and he's about to leave. So Chama says, "Where are you going?" He says, "Yeah, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. Possibly go to a movie or something like that." So Chama Yosef says, "Do you have money to go out?" And he says, no, I do not. So Chama Yosef took out his wallet and gave him some money. He says, "Here, you have a good time." He says, "But I'm going to give you this on one condition." He said, "You have to continue to have a connection. You have to come back again." So the kid says, "Fine." He says, "Today the kid is a Rosh Kollel." A Rosh Kollel means he leads a rabbinical college now in Eretz Yisrael. Chama Yosef had a love for Torah, but he also had a love for the Jewish nation. Because when you have a love for God, you do everything that you need to do because that is what you do, and you're in a loving relationship. No matter what happens, no matter what is going on, you are going to do the right thing. The idea behind it is that when somebody is obsessed with love, and it's something very interesting. This world that we live in today is obsessed with love. It's something very interesting. I would assume movies are today the same way that it has been. That any movie that you watch, you shouldn't be watching. Any movie that somebody watches, though, is what? It always has some sort. Again, I'm assuming that it has some sort of love relationship in it. It could be a Holocaust war movie, showing the decimation of 6 million Jews, but there's some couple in there that there's a love story going on over here. It could be a horror movie. There could be a clown killing babies. It doesn't matter. In some part of the movie, there's a love movie. It could be an action movie. It doesn't matter. And the question is, why? Why are we upset? Why is there always love to it? Why is there anything? And if you think about it, it's not just the movies. It's when you're reading these magazines that People magazine. There's other magazines that have on entertainment. I don't know. Don't help me out. There's other magazines that they're obsessed with the celebrity's life. But what's very interesting? Do they ever ask, be like, well, this celebrity just invested, with this person and they just lost 10% of their investment? It doesn't say anything like that. Be like, this celebrity got divorced. This celebrity is getting married. Do you know who he married to before? Do you know who he was before? All centered around the love life of a celebrity. Now, right? I'm right? Okay, fine. So, the question is, why are we so obsessed with love? Why are we so obsessed with love? And to answer that, we have to understand what is instinct. Instinct, and we spoke about this before, an animal has an instinct because it needs those instincts to survive. A deer sees a cheetah, it's going to book. It's not going to be like, do you want to play bingo? Is you hungry? He's not going to ask any questions. He's running. He sees a cheetah, he's running. It's an instinct. You see your predator, adios, if you're in Mexico, right? Whatever. And you run, and that's it, you're out. Instincts are meant for survival. Wait for you guys. Let's gather yourselves. All right. Okay. We're good? Okay. All right. Okay. So now, when you have an instinct is what? An instinct. We're not ready. We're not there yet. All right.
You did that part again.
We do a take two. You'd be like, to rewind it, Well,
Good plug now.
all right. Class is open, by the way. Whoever wants to come, we're on here on BJX on 1601 East, Quentin Road, on Thursdays for a woman. Okay, so now, I got everyone serious and be like, oh, speaking about the classes, Okay, so now, what is an instinct is for survival. And it's needed for survival. Yet, when you're dealing in the animal world, makes perfect sense. Instinct, run, survive, great, awesome, chazak b'ruch. What about the human survival? It makes no sense. Some things in human survival, why do we have an instinct for pursuit of happiness? Because anybody explain to me why we strive for happiness? Why is it that we constantly want happiness? Is it needed for our survival? You could survive without happiness. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can't survive without happiness. You would want, but there's a pursuit for happiness. We do everything that we do for happiness. Why do we have that? The answer is because God gave every single being an instinct because that is their purpose in their life. We have an instinct for happiness because there's a purpose for us. We need to be happy. And that is our purpose. But how do we achieve that happiness? We think, if I'll make $1 million, then I'll be happy. If I'll buy this Hermes bag, then I'll be happy. If I'll get somebody else to buy me this Hermes bag, then I'll be happy. If I will marry somebody who can buy me a Hermes bag, then I will be happy. If I can marry somebody who wants to buy me this Hermes bag without me asking him, then I'll be happy.
Do you want a Hermes bag?
Yeah. All I know is that, how I know about Hermes? Because one time I was with my wife, and my wife pointed out to me a certain store, and she mentioned one of the things about the store. I don't know. It's like you can't just go shopping there for certain items. You have to get invited and be like, no, we will invite you to buy a $25,000 bag. You cannot just buy a $25,000 bag if you would so like to. Since you have to be invited to it. I'm like, this is a society that is very, very messed up. Interesting business model also. Interesting business model. I'm not going to say that it's wrong.
Torah, like you said,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's good. So when we look at the instinct, so we look at happiness and instinct. What is the instinct that human beings have for love? We do. We have an instinct for love. No matter what it is, we're constantly like, it's a love. You ever see a woman look at a little baby? You think like, oh, it's so cute. No, it's a love instinct. It's like I just want to, I just want to. It's a love instinct that you have it. When a woman sees a happy married, and the reason why I'm saying woman is because we're dealing with women over here, but if I would say men, it's the same thing. We're obsessed with love. Why are we obsessed with love? Because there is a purpose for it. But we think, if I find the right man, then I'll be in love forever. Like if this, I'll be... No. I mean, granted, that you need that. You do need that. You need to find the right person. You need to be in love. It needs to be the all amazing, happily ever after. It should be like that. But the ultimate purpose is not that. The ultimate purpose is when you see the love that you have between you and your husband or you and your wife, then you can be able to direct that to God and be like, you know what? I can understand the relationship that I need to have. The love, the relationship, the instinct that we have is that we need to direct that, we need to direct that to God. You think about it, when somebody is infatuated with something, the easiest example I could give is let's say, and I gave this with the men's class, is with cell phones. There's some people, and I know these people, they're obsessed with cell phones. They're like, you don't understand, what is it? Is that the iPhone, CGIF, He's like, no, this is the iPhone TGIF, like, it's, what, it's like you ask all, like, and imagine this person, and, you ask him a phone and be like, yeah, the specs are, this has a CPU, or the RAM, blah, 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 and all other stuff, whatever, I don't know. About, all the specs rambling off it because they're obsessed. Now imagine this obsession-derived person on phone, and use your, I don't know, jewelry, makeup, I don't know, whatever, let's go onto the waters that are dangerous, right? The shark waters. So, imagine this guy's walking down the street. He sees an iPhone, I don't know, X squared or XI, whatever they're going to do, right? The next iPhone, before it even comes out. And he's going to be like, like, complete stranger walking past by him. And he's going to be like, and excuse me, can I talk to you for a second? Is that the iPhone, Hey, he's like, is that the new iPhone that didn't come out yet? And the guy's going to be like, he's like, yeah. He's like, are you God? How do you have in possession of it? It's not supposed to come out till like whenever iPhone comes out. I don't know, whatever. February, May, June, July, August, whatever. I don't know. October, 15. Is that, how do you have it? It's like 6 months before I didn't even think they put it in production yet. I'll be like, no, I'm a high executive, and so I have all the advanced things. Can I touch it? And be like, I just want to, And this guy is so obsessed with I'd be like, Gorilla Glass, backward and forward, 2 cameras, 1 sensor, one battery, it's like rambling all these things. Because you realize, like, the new iPhone comes out, be like, this camera is better than before. Not 1 time zoom, but 2 time zoom from 2 different angles. $1,000. And be like, yes, please, Children's tuition can wait. We were so. Imagine this guy's so obsessed with it. He sees that. He knows everything about the new iPhone. He knows everything. Imagine if we're obsessed like that on the Torah. Imagine you're walking down the street, and let's use this as a man's walking down the street. He sees a sefer someone's reading. Be like, is that the new sefer from like? And be like, I thought it wasn't even. He's like, could I just smell the pages? I just want to. You look through it. Imagine that's the level of love that you have with the Torah. Imagine, I go into a Sfarim store, it's a candy store for me. I love it. I'm like there, I'm like, this is new, and this is it's amazing. I'm like over here. I go with like a stack of books, to the register. You go and you enjoy it because you love it. You're obsessed with it. You enjoy it. That's what you're supposed to have with the Torah. It only happens through love. It only happens. The connection that you have this is only through love. And when people get older, a lot of people, especially more appropriate to the men, they say, I'll learn when I'll retire. I'll learn when I'll whatever. When I'll have time. When a person's young, that's when a person's able to build their hobbies. When you get older, you don't create new hobbies. You sort of have your hobbies that you have, and you sort of build on that. If you're not going to enjoy learning Torah when you're young, forget about it when you're older. You're going to be watching Jeopardy, and be like, I saw this episode 70 years ago, And be like, the answer is a hippopotamus. He's the strongest jaw. And I'll be like, you have reached success in your life, Congratulations. You know the answer to Jeopardy. You have to go, and the only way to achieve it is you have to achieve it now. You have to achieve it when you're young. You have to achieve the enjoyment for it. I just realized what time it is. There's no way I'm going to be finishing anytime soon. So, because if anybody needs to leave, as I say this pretty often, please feel free to do your thing. There was once an Amorah, because I have to go, it's part of it, there's an amazing story that I have to tell you, and it's all part of it. So, the Amorah, there's a Gemara in Bachot, page 18b, that a woman came to a dream into Rav Zeiri. And she goes, and she passed away, this woman. She says, can you tell my mother to please send me an eye color brush and a comb to me? And the question is, what's this Gemara talking about? This woman is dead, right? D-E-A-D, dead, finished. What does she need eye color? What is that thing called? Eyeshadow, I don't know, whatever. I thought mascara. I thought that's what I told her. I went to the men class. I'm like, the Gemara, it was like, it's sort of, like eye color. I thought it was mascara or whatever it is. So eyeshadow, right? So you're whatever, you're painting your eyes, right? So, what does she need it? She's not alive anymore. She needs a comb? She needs to comb her hair? She doesn't need it anymore. And the answer is that when somebody is obsessed with something in this world, that's how you're going to be in the next world. You cannot change who you are. What you're obsessed with over here, you're going to be obsessed with over there. This is what we spoke about when we dealt with the Dibukim, the exorcism. People are obsessed with such things because that's who they were in this world. I have to share with you this amazing story to understand this, so much clearer. There was once a princess who she was at a marriageable age, and the father, the way that they used to marry is that they would find another prince from another kingdom, and they would marry them together, and they would, expand their kingdom, and, this way they would be able to make sure, the rich marry the rich, make sure that the money stays and the kingdom grows. So, she had this juka, she had a little bug in her head. She's like, no, I want to marry for love. Can we understand that? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. You should marry for. And she's like, no, it's based of love, and it's based of connection, it's based of building a home together. So every eligible prince, bachelor that she got, she was like, not for me, too uptight, to this, whatever it is, it wasn't working out for him. So the father, the king, was a very smart man. He says, fine. All right, not for you yet? We'll wait, no problem. And she goes, and she was a person that she loved to take walks. She would take a walk in this hill. There was this river at the bottom of the steep hill, and then she would like to walk on top of it, oversee the hill, very peaceful, very beautiful. And she would always take these walks with her entourage, with her bodyguards. One day she was walking, and she's looking over there, and she saw this beautiful bird, and she wanted to get a closer look at it, and she didn't realize it was like a tree stump that was sticking out. That she tripped over the tree stump, and she started rolling down the hill. And now the guards were all up on the top of the hill. Now, if you ever tried catching anybody rolling down the hill, they're much faster than you running down the hill. Somehow, head over heels, they're going a lot faster. So the guards are running down, but they can't. She's like rolling. A guy sees that from the bottom of the hill. He sees that. He starts booking. He starts running. He dives. He catches the princess, and then he turns around and his head hits the stone, his back hits another tree. He's like just to protect the princess. And, she's all, basically, he caught her, stopped the fall. And, she wakes up in a daze. She gets up over there. She's like, and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I think so. Meanwhile, the guards, finally catch up to them. And they're like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And she's like, yeah. And they grab her and they're like, okay, come on. We got to go back to the doctor. We got to make sure everything's okay. Whatever, comparable to x-rays back then. And they grabbed her and they took her back. Meanwhile, the guy that saves her, thinks like a man. And he instantly fell in love with her. He's like, because, come on, I saved your life. I literally, you would have fallen, at least 5 to 7 feet into cold water. I for sure saved, in his mind, he saved the prince's life. He's like, what does he expect?
Therefore he's in love.
Her hand in marriage, yeah. This is going to be like, she's going to, so he's already, man's imagination, where it's like, he already has names for his servants, and where he's going to, the palace, and how he's going to overlooking, he's like, that's it, I'm getting married to, and he's all in his mind. He's like, wait a minute. She's like, she doesn't know who I am. She's never, so it's like, I have to, we have to, get, so he's like, I'm a smart man. He just starts thinking, and he says, you know what? He says the next day, he knows that she likes taking, everyone knows that she likes taking walks in that area. The next day, where she fell, he's going to put a rose over there, a little red rose, right where she fell. So he goes, he makes sure he wakes up early. He puts a red rose on the tree, the tree thing over there, and he walks in the distance. And he sees, another, young woman, trying to get that. He runs over, he's like, not for you. Step away from the rose. She runs away, and he's eyeing that rose. He's like making sure, the rose gets into intended. Hours go by, and suddenly he's over there in the distance. He's looking at, at the rose, and all of a sudden, the princess walks by. Doesn't notice the rose, just keeps on walking, and he's like, oh, okay. The next day he comes out, puts a rose again. Again, he's walking. He's like watching this, like a mother bird watching the eggs. It's like no one's touching this rose. And she doesn't notice it again. And finally, the third day, she notices the rose, and she notices that's where she tripped. So she picks it up, and she smells it, and whatever, chucks it, and she keeps on walking. And he's like, okay. And the next day, he puts the rose again. And she sees a rose again over there, and she's like, well, this is odd. And this goes on for like a week. And she's like, why is there a rose where I fell? So, she goes and she sees a rose, and she starts, looking around, like where, and she sees a guy in the distance. He's like, he's like, savior, like whatever, I don't know. So he goes And she's like, oh, she finally understands what she's saying. She's like, she waves nicely. His heart is like beating 7,000. Like, I knew she loves me. Like, and so she's like, and she continues the walk. And this goes on for another few weeks. Every day, another rose. And every time she looks at him, she like does a wave, and he does this like, little geeky wave over there. And finally, after a few weeks, she calls him over. And she sees her do like this. He's like a sprint runner. He's like running, like a deer running away from a cheetah. He's there, and he's like, in his mind, he's like, whatever she says, na'aseh v'nishma, I don't care. I am doing whatever she says. She runs up over to him. He's like wheezing from his, and all of a sudden she's like, it's a very nice gesture what you're doing about all these roses. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I hate roses. And he's like, and then she's like, and then she just like walks away. And his first of all, his heart is beating 7,000 beats per minute because of his jog. His breathing 7,000 breaths per minute because of his jog. Now his mind is racing 7,000 miles per hour because of what she said. And he's like, what? She doesn't like roses? And he's getting lightheaded. He's like, you know what? And then he starts thinking, he's like, maybe she, I have to do another flower. It's like I'm doing something all wrong. So he decides he's going to do some recon. He's going to do some, he's like, all right, what flower does a princess like? So he goes and he starts investigating. He goes over to the people in the town and be like, what flowers the princess like? Guy's like, I'm an apple salesman. I don't know. And he's like, no, cool. He goes over to the next salesman. He's like, hey, yeah, weird question. You know what the flowers a princess like? And they're like, why? Why would I know that? Like, no, I don't know that. And he's like not getting anywhere. Finally, he goes to the guards. He'd be like, hey, I have a question. I know you think it's going to be weird, but what flowers does the princess like? The guard says, who are you? Like, get out of here. Like, how did you get onto the grounds even? Like, just get out. He's like, he saw that he was not getting anywhere. So he decided that he's going to have to figure out what flower she likes. So what he decided to do is he created this Excel spreadsheet on wood, obviously because Excel doesn't exist yet. So he carved out boxes onto wood, and he started putting each day another flower. And he would rate her expression, the way that she sees a flower, from 1 to 10 on how she liked it. And he went through roses, sunflowers, other stuff, daffodils, daisies, lilies, all great flowers. Went through whatever he had in his possession he was able to do. And thank you. And he never, it was like, 3s, 4s, 5s at best. He's like, this is not going to do it. Finally, he found, he decided it was Orchid's turn, and he put an orchid over there, and then he's like, got a 6.5 going on over here. This was the best, the best experience that she had was with this flower, and she's like, okay, so, we got it, so we're going over here. By the way, he finished all his flowers, and the best one that came up was the orchid. So he's like, all right, I got to look for orchids now. And he started looking for orchids, and, every so often she would do a little wave to him, and he would, wave back, be like, and they would continue this charade, and, eventually, he started getting different type of orchids, trying to figure out what is the best orchid. One day he's in town. He sees a traveling salesman, and he sees a certain orchid over there, beautiful orchid. It was green petals with red dots on it, very, very rare. He says, what orchid is this? He says, this is the gold of Kinablu orchid. So he's like, very, very rare, it's like very rare. He's like, I want to buy it. He's like, okay, it's very expensive. It's a very rare orchid. And he says, yeah, no problem. And he gives him the price. He says, and he buys the orchid. He buys the orchid. He puts it down over there. By the way, it's a real orchid. It's really, really expensive. And it is really, really rare. And he goes and he puts it down by the tree stump over there. The next day, he's watching her. She picks up the orchid, and he's like, bing, bing, bing. This is the jackpot. It's like a 10. It's like, hearts in her eyes, birds are chirping around her, and he's like, this is it. This is the orchid that I need to get. Before he even goes and says anything to her, he books back to the traveling, flower salesman. He says, give me all of these orchids that you have. He says, to be honest, I only have one left. He says, he says, only one? He says, where can I buy it? He says, this is a very rare orchid. You have to travel very far in order to buy this type of thing. He says, okay, fine, I'll plant them. I'm going to start, producing these. I got it. This is my golden ticket. And the guy says, you know how difficult it is to grow this type of orchid? It's so difficult. You need the right thing. He says, I don't care how difficult it is. I need to know I'm going to do it. He's like, impossible. The guy says, regardless, I'm going to buy it. And then he started grilling him like 1,000 questions. What do I do in the sun? And then what do I do? What type of water? When do I plant it? Everything. There's a travel salesman. This was his business. So he knew a lot about the flower. And he started giving him every detail that he possibly knew about it. He took the orchid, he brought it home, he started, asking any other flower salesman, any of the other botanists, am I pronouncing that right? He went and he started asking all these flower specialists, what could I do for this? And they started getting, this one gave him this potion, this one gave him this thing, you got to do this, you got to do that. He collected everything and he tried to reproduce this. Failed every single time miserably. Until finally, he was able, and this is like weeks of it, he was like becoming a mad scientist with like flowers everywhere, pictures of flowers everywhere. He's like, becoming crazy with the flower obsession. And finally he finds this like very rare, crazy potion that when he put it inside, that's the only way that it's going to grow in a certain way, in a certain sunlight, with a certain amount of water. He found the exact way that it would be able to grow. And he starts growing these things. And finally, after, a few weeks, whatever, it was growing very fast, he was able to go and he started bringing them back to the tree bench over there, and he goes and he starts putting it down over there, and she sees it every time her face lights up. She grabs the orchid and she's so happy. And after a few weeks of constantly getting the same orchid, she calls him over. And this is the second time she calls him over. So he's running like a fat kid is running to cake, right? She's booking it, and he's going over there. And he missed dinner, so he's running towards over there, and he's like, I better get in shape for these runs. And he gets over there, out of breath. And she's like, you've got to tell me where you get these orchids, because I've asked all the specialists in the in the kingdom, and they say it's nowhere. You can't purchase these things nearby over here. Where do you get this from? And he says, well, to be honest, I produce them. I make them. He says, how? What does they do? So he tells her, he says, not to sound, stalkerish, but I sort of been keeping tabs on your facial expression, how you like flowers. And I found that this flower, you had the greatest enjoyment from it. And all I want to do is give you happiness and give you when you smile, it lights up my whole day. And he says, that's all I wanted to do. So I worked day in and day out for weeks on end to try to make it that I will be able to produce this orchid for you. And she was like, that's the most beautiful thing anybody has ever said to me. And she goes and she says, that's great. And they start, talking, and eventually, how like if the next day when he put in the orchid, he came a little bit closer, 5 yards closer, and the next day a little bit closer. When you want to, let's say, pet a raccoon for some odd reason. So you'll first feed the raccoon, but from the distance. Then the next time you're going to come, a little bit closer. And then be like, hey, I'm your friend. And a little closer, until you could touch the rabies-diseased, animal. So the same thing, he was slowly inching his way, closer. Eventually, it came to the point that they were like, hey, how's your day? How's everything? They little small chit-chats every once in a while. I had longer chit-chats. And this progressed until, the talks became a little bit longer. And they started having, feelings for each other. And, she was thinking, she was like, you know what? She's like, this guy is, out of all the men that I've dated, this guy never did something. She says, let me see how much he really cares about me. So she goes over to him one day and she says, you know what else I like? And he's like, you like other stuff besides, he's like, what? What do you like? And she's like, I love seashells. I love seashells. But the problem was that in their particular kingdom, the ocean that was nearby, in order to get the seashells, you had to go really, really deep under the water. There was the shores were very steep, and in order to get it, you had to swim really, really deep. Nobody was able to do it because it was too deep. They couldn't do it as much as they tried. They couldn't do it. She says, that's what I really like, but I can't get it. And he's like, challenge accepted. Thank you. He's like, challenge accepted. And he goes over there. The next day he jumps right into the water, sees how the death, and he's like, really, there's no way that he could do it. And he's trying to, exercise and work in it, and he's trying to think, he goes back to his think station, he moves all the flower stuff away, and he starts, thinking of diagrams, thinking of what he can do to be able to get, maybe get a long pole, maybe this. And then he thought about it, maybe if I put air in a bag, and I swim down, and then halfway through, I'll take in a breath from the bag, and then I'll be able to go even deeper. And he starts testing out all these bags of air, and he starts, experimenting with all these things. And as he's experimenting, he's exercising, breathing, underwater, and he's able to hold his breath for longer. After a few weeks, he gets to the point where he finds a perfect bag that he's able to hold some air. He puts a little straw in. He finds all the things that he needs to find, and then he's able to actually touch the bottom of the ocean floor. But the problem is that he's so far away from the surface that he has literally a split second, grab whatever he sees, and then he has to shoot right back up again. Otherwise, he's not going to make it, because a few times he almost passed out. And every single time, so that's what he started doing. He started, collecting the air, putting it in the bag, swinging it under, grabbing whatever dirt that he can, and running up. Most of the time, he came up with just dirt. Every so often, he came up with a shell or two. And by the end of the first day, he found 4 seashells. The next day, he's by the tree trunk over there. He puts this, he's the orchid that he produced, and he puts nearby 4 seashells. And she goes by. She picks up the orchid as usual, and she sees the 4 seashells. She's like, wow, how did you do that? Whatever. I can do that. I can do this stuff. Whatever. So I got this. And she's like, she was like really impressed. And then, she's like started talking to him more. And the next day, so how impressed he was. He made sure, and then it became 8 seashells. And he started collecting, seashells nonstop. And every day they would come back, there would be seashells, and there would be, the beautiful orchid over there. Until finally he goes up there, they get close enough, and says, listen. He says, I know I'm stepping out of line over here. You're a princess. I'm a simple commoner. He says, but if I were to ever be able to be your husband, I would make you the most happiest woman in the entire world. I'll do anything for you. He says, how would you ever consider such a thing? He says, listen. He says, we come from 2 different backgrounds. I don't know. He's like, I understand. I totally understand it. But then it started to get her thinking, and he'd be like, out of all the men that she dated, there was like nobody who even came close. And this is all that she wanted. She wanted the love. She didn't care about the money. She didn't care about the honor. She wanted the love. She wanted the happiness. That's what she wanted. So she decides she's going to ask her father. She goes over to the father, and she says, there's a guy that, and the father says, yeah, I know. What do you think? I've been keeping tabs on you. I know about this guy. So she goes and she says, he's a really nice guy. And she's like, what would be your thoughts of meeting him for a possible marriage candidate? The king was a very smart man, and she saw by the time that he found out about it, she was really, emotionally vested into this. And he says, I am obviously not for it. I don't think this is the right man for you. She says, but you don't understand. He's going to make me happy. You don't understand. I've never met anybody like this. Don't you want my happiness? Don't you want you to just be happy? And he's like, of course I do, And she says, so then the king asks her like this, says, are you willing to give everything up for this man? I'm talking about honor, everything, living as a simple man for this man. And she thinks for a few minutes, and then she says, you know what? I am willing to give everything up. Father says, if that's the case, then you have my blessing. He says, I still don't think that it's the right choice, but I'll stand by you. And she's like so excited. She runs back the next day, and she calls him over, and she's like, I spoke to my father about it, and he said, yeah. And he, in his mind, he's like, it's going to be Geppetto as my one servant, and he's already thinking about who's servant. He's already life as a palace. He didn't think about working, and for the past few months, he's been doing flowers and seashells. Right? He doesn't do anything. He's like, this is the big business deal that I'm working for. I'm going to be the prince. I'm going to be the next king. In his mind, he's already, making wars with people he doesn't like, chipped him off when he was younger. And he goes over and, he's in his mind and she's talking and he's, the way men are. And suddenly she says, you know what made me decide and realize that I wanted this? And he's like, what? Well, what made you realize that? He says, my father asked me, would I give everything up for this? And, the royalty, the money, the honor, everything. And I thought about it, and I said, yeah, I'm willing to give up everything for you. And he's like, run that by me one more time. He said, what? Give what? What do you mean give it? What do you... what happened to Geppetto? What do you mean give everything up? And she's like, well, no servants, no nothing. He's like, everything. And she sees his facial expression went from this to Tisha B'Av. And he's like, she's like, is everything okay? He's like, I think he quick on his feet. He's like, no, not. I mean, for you, you're got used to this to just leave everything for that. And she's like, no, all that stuff doesn't mean anything to me. I just want to be happy, and I think you're going to make me happy. And that's all I need for it. And he's like, yeah, totally, right on, yeah, for sure. And he meets the father, whatever, everything is going good, and they start making wedding plans. And, he's still, obviously, even though he really wanted the money, he was still, very much emotionally in love with, with her. And he goes and he takes over the entire wedding preparation. He says his entire wedding, he says, I'm breeding, 7,000, orchids for this. He's like, it's going to be covered with orchids and seashells everywhere. He's like doubling his, his quota for his seashells, collection. And he arranges the entire wedding. puts it everything just the way that she likes. Everything that she ever told him, that any dream that she had was in, depictions in seashells and these flowers. He really made the wedding perfect because he really wanted to make her happy. And the wedding goes by amazing. Wedding goes, unbelievable. And he sees the father, the king, always like one of the, always eyes on him. And he sees him, so the guy goes over to the king and he says, listen, you should know that I'm not doing this for the money, for the honor. I really do love your daughter. I really do want to make her happy. And the king's like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And he's like, cool, okay, thanks, Dad. Yeah, love you, Dad. Yeah, and they go on, and after the wedding, a few days after the wedding, the father calls over the son-in-law and says, listen, he says, in my kingdom, in my household, there's no free rides. And he's like, yeah, totally, I'm a hard worker, whatever, man. So, yeah, and he goes and he says, I will, I'll buy you a house. You'll have a house. He says, but you'll have to, work on your own. He says, and the guy says, yeah, I totally understand that, for sure, I agree. That's great, thank you very much. And they part their ways. A few weeks go by. The father, the king, buys him a house. He gives him a nice house, and he goes there, and now he has to go and work on his own. So he goes and he starts working. And it's very difficult for him to make ends meet. He's always thinking, he's like, listen, my wife is used to, caviar. She's used to all these crazy expensive stuff. I need to give her what she's used to. And he's working and he's stressing himself out, and it's becoming very difficult. Some days he's not able to put food on the table. It just so happens when he doesn't have any money, he just so happens to find a bag of gold coins, near his apartment, near his house. And he's like, whoa, what a coincidence, And he goes and he puts it in. Meanwhile, obviously the king is paying very close attention. Every time that he sees he's not making enough money, he makes sure that his daughter has enough. But without him obviously noticing it. And as the time goes by, the financial stress continues. And what happens when you have financial stress? Unfortunately, it also brings to marital strife. And, they start little petty things. He starts getting, upset with it. He's like, I don't understand. He says, I have to do everything myself over here. I have to work for you. He says, how much I need to provide for you. He says, why don't you work? And she's like, oh, hold on a second. He says, you're working for me? He says, I need plain and simple. I don't need anything. He says, don't think that you're working for me. You're working for yourself. He says, I never wanted this. He's like, no, but still, you're a princess and this and that and that. And they start bickering and fighting. And one fight leads to another fight leads to another fight. And in the end, he's like, you're breathing too loud, whatever. And the end, obviously, Shalom Bayit is not happening. The king hears about it because obviously he's keeping close tabs. And he's about to pull the plug. And the king decides, you know what? He says, it's almost our 1 year anniversary. Let me wait. Let me wait and see what's going to happen. Let me give it till after the 1 year anniversary. Otherwise, I'm pulling her back in. So he waits, and meanwhile, it was the day before anniversary. They get into another huge fight. The guy is so, in his mind, so heated up. He says, you know what, I'm going out for a walk. He goes out for a walk. He starts roaming the streets. He ends up in front of the palace. He sees all the royalty, all, his extended family, like walking in there with the expensive clothes, expensive jewelry. Everything is, treated with honor and respect. And he's like, this could have all been mine. This could have all been mine. And as he's looking with envy, he starts thinking, and then he's like, wait a minute. He's like, this was all my wife. My wife had all this, and she left it all because I promised her happiness. I promised that I'll be able to deliver. And he says, look at this. He says, not only has she lost that, she also lost that from me. And for the first time in her life, he breaks down crying. He's like, I can't understand where I went. He says, I did this for her, and look where I ended up with. Well, I was thinking about myself, and not only that, I took away what she had, and I didn't give her anything else. And in fact, I made it more difficult for her. And he says, from now on, new leaf. This is going to be a new me. And he decides a whole plan. He's going to make it up to her like no one's business. The next day, he wakes up early. He goes over to her and he says, my darling, I know it's our anniversary. He says, I'm changed. He says, I've arranged for you to have one full day at the spa, pampering you like you're used to. Go and take the day, and she's like, whatever it is to get away from you, I'm fine, like no fighting. Send me wherever you need to go. And she goes. Meanwhile, that was just, get her out of the house. Meanwhile, he gets right to work. He runs right to the ocean, and he starts, because he stopped giving her the orchids, and he got to fight and be like, I hate you, an orchid. He stopped giving her all those presents, shortly after they got married. He goes and he starts diving, collects seashells and seashells and seashells. Then he runs to his farmhouse, whatever, where he was growing all these things. And he realized because he hasn't been, there was thousands of them everywhere. Because he was growing them so often, they started growing by themselves in the same conditions that they were. And he cuts every single last one of them. He collects hundreds of seashells. He had energy that he felt that he never had before. He was on the bottom of the seabed like a fish, he was like collecting all these things, putting them in his mouth, and he was going up and putting them, he was collecting tens at a time. Finally, he felt that he had enough. He gathered all his stuff and he ran back to his house. And he started decorating the entire house exactly like he decorated the wedding. And he was decorating everything. For hours and hours he's working nonstop, decorating the entire house. And finally he's finished, it's getting late, and he runs to the palace. He goes, knocks on the door, and he says, the guards open up, he says, I need to speak to the king. He says, like you and everybody else, go to the back of the line. He says, no, you don't understand. He says, I'm the son-in-law of the king. I'm the one, and he starts saying, he says, and the guy's like, yeah, we know who you are. And he says, please, I'm begging you, I've never asked, since the day that I got married, I never asked from the king, I need one favor. Please ask the king, I need it, it's urgent and it's emergent. And they get the message to the king, and the king says, oh, well, here it is, someone needs some dough. And he says, fine, all right, send him in. The guy walks in, he's sweating, he's panting. He says, my dear king, he says, I need a huge favor from you. And the king says, sure, expecting it. He says, what do you need? He says, I need, he says, and he gives him a little of the backstory. He says, listen, I haven't been the best of husband. I tried to, do, and I really failed. And he says, I really turned in a new leaf. And he explained his whole plan. He says, I'm decorating the entire house. I want it to be just like the wedding night. He says, I was able to do everything else. There's one thing that I cannot do. I cannot cook the meals that she's used to over here. I don't have the talent. I don't have the ability to. Only the chefs in the palace are able to cook this type of meal. He says, I'm asking you, please, and I'm begging of you. My only request is make me one meal. One meal, her favorite meal, a meal that she had on her wedding night. I want to present that to her. The king is like, tears in his eyes. Like, that's the beautiful thing I've ever seen, right? And he's like, yeah, for sure. Give me 1 hour, you got it. King calls it, everyone, all hands on deck. And they're all making this thing. Meanwhile, this guy's pacing back and forth, Like he has a court case. And he's going back and forth. And finally, the king, packages it really nicely with a nice silver thing. He says, here you go. Threw in a bunch of very expensive silverware also, he felt so good about it, his finally son-in-law treating his daughter right. And he takes this this package, and he books it, he runs into the house. Baruch Hashem, she didn't make it yet. And he puts a plate on in the center of the house. He makes a table, arranges everything. He starts lighting candles everywhere, and he goes and he changes into his tuxedo, into his wedding suit. And he's standing over there. Maybe he showered before, hopefully. And he's standing over there and in his thing, and she opens the door, refreshed and relaxed. Cucumbers are still on her eyes. And she comes out over there, and she says, what's going on over here? And he's standing over there with like literally a note, and he says, my darling wife, he says, I haven't delivered on what I promised you. I've been a terrible husband. I have been a terrible person to you. And he says, not only have you lost what you had, but I haven't given you what I promised. And he says, I am deeply sorry for that. And I am deeply, deeply, terribly moved and apologetic for whatever I did. I want you to know from today on, it's different. This is exactly like we had on our wedding night, because I want to get married to you again, and I want to do it right this time. And she's like, in tears, and she sees everything exactly like it was in her wedding night. She says, please, here's your dinner. And he goes and he opens up the thing, and inside is her favorite dish. And she's like, how did you get this? He's like, it's like, this is all my favorite food when I was growing up. And he's like, I have connections. And she goes and she eats a meal, and he's sitting over there, with tears in his eyes, watching her. And then suddenly a thought enters his mind, and he starts looking around the room, and it starts bringing back his emotions that he had when he got married. And he was like, he remembered when he was so obsessed about making her happy, then when he started looking around, he started bringing himself back to his wedding day, and how happy he was, and how much he wanted to do for his wife. He would have done anything for her. And he was looking, he says, he thought that he was doing this for her. In essence, he was really doing it for himself. And he was going, and he was like, this is, he's like, from today on, he says, I'm a changed man. And it really was. He was a changed man. He treated her the way that she should have been treated. I mean, she was literally like the happiest girl in the entire world. Non-stop orchids and seashells and poems and this. It was beautiful from morning to night. And he decided he's going to go to the seashell, into the flower business, and he was actually quite successful. The king was keeping tabs on him, and he calls him in after a few months after this. And the king says, I've been keeping close tabs on you. He says, I wanted to see if you really love my daughter. So I wasn't going to just give you, invite you and give you everything. I wanted to see if you were really true to it or were really doing it for the money. And he says, a few times I almost pulled it out. I almost pulled the plug. And I decided I would give you a chance, and I'm happy I did, because I see how happy my daughter is right now, and I see what you're willing to do for her. I know that you are the right one. And he says, of course I have a palace for you. Of course I have servants for you. Of course you're going to run the kingdom. He says, and he invites him into this huge palace, and they live happily ever after. Until obviously she steps out of the line, and then, I'm just kidding. It wasn't a Middle Eastern story. All right, relax. So in any case, she goes, and they really live happily ever after. We go to Shavuot. What are we doing on Shavuot? There's no mitzvot in it. We're decorating the shuls with the flowers. We're eating dairy. What are we doing all these things? Because it says, on Har Sinai there were flowers. We see this over there in Exodus chapter 34 verse 3. There was flowers, there was greenery. So we decorate the shuls, we decorate everything like that we were there. We were all in Har Sinai. We're reminding ourselves on the wedding night. The wedding night we're painting the whole picture back. That's why you go to the houses, it's full of flowers. You go to the shul, they're full of flowers. Only holiday you put flowers in the shul. And not only that, we eat dairy. Why do we eat dairy? Because that's what we ate on Shavuot night. Why do we eat dairy? Because we couldn't eat meat. We had all these laws. You have to slaughter, you have to salt. We weren't able to do it yet. We were only able to eat dairy. That's why we eat dairy now. What we're doing is we're recreating the entire night. Why are we recreating the entire night? Because you and every single Jew was on Har Sinai. And we were there and we were like, we will do anything. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do whatever it is. Whatever it takes, we're going to do for God. Doesn't matter what it is. I will do and then I will listen. He says, in order to remember that, we've got to recreate the entire experience. He says, you are recreating it. When we're creating that entire experience, there's no law, there's no specific mitzvot. God says, I just want you to be happy. You know what we say? He says, well, we want to make you happy. How are we going to make you happy? He says that we got to learn. We learn Torah all night. Why do we learn Torah all night? Imagine you come after a wedding night. What are you going to do with your husband? Right? You go and you talk, you're like, how's everything? How's this? You're connecting like you've never connected before. Imagine a guy goes to his wife after the wedding night. And she's like, so how's the wedding? And he's on his phone. I was like, I just got to do this tweet. Awesome, sick wedding. And this. And then finally she's like, could you have like a few minutes? Can we talk? And he's like, yeah, for sure. But, like 5 minutes, I need to take a smoke break. And then every 5 minutes, there's some people that learn on Shavuot, every 5 minutes, they go take another break. They got to go see what's on the food table. And they got to go get another cup of coffee. And then they got to go see, what is this? So this is the relationship that you're having? If you love God, then you don't get up from your seat on Shavuot. You're sitting down, you're learning nonstop because this is the way that you're connecting to the love of your life. This is the way that you're connecting. You're nonstop talking. It's a bad relationship if you can't talk to your wife. If you can't sit and talk to your wife for more than 5 minutes, then it's a very bad thing. What's going on over here? You are bored by talking to your wife? How is that possible? You're bored by talking to your husband? We ask, like this man asked 1,000 questions to the flower dealer. Why? He wanted to do everything perfect. We're learning Torah, we're asking everything 100,000 questions, we're asking all the details. How do we do this mitzvah perfectly? Because we want to do it perfectly, because that deserves nothing less other than that. The idea of this, and this is what we say in Shir HaShirim, let him kiss me with the kisses of the mouth, for your love is better than wine. There's no obligation. There's no obligation over here. The obligation here is just to make each other happy. And that's the obligation of love. And in order to do that, that is what you're doing. That is the Torah. That is what we do on this night. If you're learning, if a man is sitting there and learning all night, you want to know how you had a good night of learning? If 4:30 a.m. comes and you've been learning for 5, 6, 7 hours, whatever it is that you're learning, and you're like, what? It's 4:30 already? That's when you know you had a good night. Because if you're spending time with the one that you love and the time flies by, that's when you know that you found the one that you love. We started off, the question was, why do we do what we do? Why is it that we do what we do? And it was something that I do speak about often. We should know, why do we do what we do? But the truth is, all this thing is useless. All this thing, why we do what we do, it's good to know these things because it makes you understand things better. But the truth is, you know why we do what we do? Because God said to do it. And it's a true, loving relationship. We don't ask questions. We just do is what we need to do. And this is why. There's something, and we're finishing up with this. When God goes over to the other nations, He goes over to Ishmael. He says, "I have a present for you." What is it? It's a Torah. What does it say in the Torah? Can't steal. Can't do it. Sorry. Goes to Esav. What does it say inside? Can't kill. No, sorry. Go to Moab. No adultery. Can't do it. No. Sorry. Why are they saying I can't do it? This is part of the Shabbat Mitzvot Ben Enoch. They have to do these things anyways. God's not telling them anything extra they have to do. They have to do these things anyways. So why are they saying no? Because God's saying, I'm going to give you these mitzvot, but now you have to do it, not because you think it's logical. Not you think because it makes sense, but because I told you so. That is the highest level of a relationship. To do a mitzvah, not because you know the reason. Not because you understand what it is, but because you love it so much. And I don't care what the reason is. I don't care. You told me to do it, I'm going to do it. That is the highest level. This is why Chacham Ovadia Yosef, when people ask him, what are you supposed to learn tonight? On Shavuot night, you're spending all night learning Torah. What are you supposed to learn tonight? He says, you learn what you love. You learn what you enjoy. And that is what you're supposed to do. And this night, it's a holiday we connect. We connect to our love. Everybody has this loving instinct. We need to love something. You're going to keep on going and you're going to try. Maybe it's the husband and it should be. Maybe it's the children and it should be. Maybe it's the parents and it should be. But the ultimate love is going to be the love between you and God. It's a love that you're going to have between you and the Creator. And that is the purpose of this holiday. There is no special mitzvah. There's no specific mitzvah special to this thing because it's all about love, and that is what we're here to do today. Questions?
Isn't that a little bit like blind faith in a way?
Technically, yes.
Do it just because.
Yes, technically, where there's reasons, except for there's chukim. There's some mitzvot that we understand. There's some mitzvot we don't understand. Paraduma. We don't understand why we need to do that. There's a reason, there's a rhyme and a reason for every single thing that we do. And for the majority of those things, we can understand those things. But there's always going to be something in Judaism that we don't understand. And you know what? What?
What we don't understand?
No, we do understand. I just told you that.
No, but I'm saying like you said that we're.
No, there's the idea is that the idea of doing something is that the ultimate. We were speaking, I think, last week. Like people should go and teach the children in school why we do what we do, and I think it's very important. That's what one of the themes that I speak when I speak about holidays is what we do. We need to know what we do, and I think it's very important because it gives you a stronger connection. But the highest level of things is not doing it because you know what it is. It's doing it because you love somebody. If your spouse makes you a meal and says you're going to love it, you're going to start questioning it, but what's inside it? What spices did you use? No, if you love that person and the person loves you, you're not worried about poison, of course. If there's a good loving relationship, you're going to do it. No matter what it is, I'll do it. Na'aseh v'nishma means I'm not asking any questions. I'll do it. However, Judaism is the only religion out of all the religions and cults that we tell them ask questions because we have the answers. But that's not the ultimate way to serve God. Ask away, 100%. Ask all the questions that you have because you'll get clarity that way. If you don't ask, you won't know. But no, the highest level of serving God is knowing without realizing, with knowing because this is what God told me to do. Any other questions? So there are places that they do have it open for women. BJX has it open for women, as well. Now, women don't have an obligation, but if you send your husbands and your children to learn, you gain from that, right? Yeah. And there's some women that don't. There's some women that don't learn. They don't go out but they learn with their, they have friends come over to their house and they learn together, like for an hour or two. They don't have to stand out all night, learn for a little bit and they go to sleep. Especially if they have kids, they should be, going to sleep to make sure that someone takes care of them.
Except for Yom Tov, no?
It is Yom Tov, okay.
What if a man can't learn the whole night? Then
So that's a whole other topic. If a man's not going to be able to learn, if a man is going to learn all night, he's not going to be able to pray, he's going to be too tired. So
it's just not in his physical capabilities. Then what?
So he should learn as much as he can, and he should speak to a rabbi why it's not in his physical capabilities to learn it. It's like a man says, I can't speak to my wife. It's just not in my physical capabilities. She's just too boring. I just can't, that's something not good. A man has an obligation to learn. Granted,
It's a little different than talking to your wife.
it's true. It's not a little, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
But at that same aspect for it, every man has an obligation to learn. Regardless of, it doesn't say, well, if you can't learn because you don't have a good head, then you don't have to learn. You always have to learn. Granted, it's lo melacha alecha ligmor. You don't have to finish it. You have to try, though. You do need to try.
So let's say a man can't stay up till Shacharis, but he could maybe stay up till 2:30. Then
So learn till 2:30. Then wake up at 9 o'clock for Shachrit. Or 8:30 to make a clock for 9 o'clock Shachrit. Any other questions? Any other questions on camera? Okay, Chazak Baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.